Good evening, everybody! The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back with another Are You In? Now, the Are You Ins for both today and tomorrow are going to be loosely themed. And the theme is these are two of my most anticipated albums of 2019. So I'm glad that I'm able to review them back to back. Today's Are You In is going to be on Bon Iver's newest album entitled I, I. Now, Bon Iver is an indie folktronica band from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Members including Sean Carey on drums, piano, and voice, Matt McCaugan on drums and synthesizers, Andrew Fitzpatrick on synthesizers and guitar, Michael Lewis on bass guitar, synthesizers, and saxophone, and Justin Vernon on guitar, bass guitar, synthesizers, voice, and radio. Their previous albums include For Emma Forever Ago in 2007, Bon Iver in 2011, and 22 Million in 2016. I've heard of this band for years, but I didn't get into them until 22 Million. After looking up all the best albums from 2016, I found that this one was getting a lot of rave reviews, so I wanted to check it out for myself. Now, my first idea of what this band was an indie folk band, but I listened to this album and of course was immediately surprised by what I heard. It was a very short album, but one that featured so many intricate and interesting experimental electronica songs that I was not expecting to hear. I was surprised, but I was also really intrigued, and I grew to love this album. I had it in my top 10 for 2016, and honestly, now when I ever go back to an album from 2016, I most likely listen to this album, mostly because some of the other albums are a little bit longer, but this is just such a brief to me. There's so many intricate and interesting ideas. I love the melodies. I love the arrangements themselves. Honestly, right now, I probably would put this album in the top 5. I can definitely see it rising higher than that as well. Of course, after finding out that they were putting out a new album in 2019, I was really interested to see what they could do. I read up about it, and from what I understand, this is the fall for the band. So the idea is For Emma Forever Ago is winter, Bon Iver is spring, 22 Million was summer, and now I is fall. It's a culmination of everything that they have done over the years. I understand that this album had dropped on August 9th, and I technically could have done a review then, but few reasons as to why I didn't do it. One, I wanted to kind of theme this with my album review tomorrow, both dropping on August 30th for the physical copies. Two, I had a couple other reviews I wanted to get done beforehand. And three, first time I listened to this album, honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I wanted to give it another chance. I wanted to digest it and see if I could appreciate this album a little bit more. And honestly, after listening to it a few other times, I've grown to really like this album. I'm not going to say it's better than 22 Million to me, but I will say it is more diverse. And that is a huge plus for this album. This album also is pretty short, clocking in at a little bit under 40 minutes. But what's really nice about this album is that it does take the electronic ideas of 22 Million and some more organic and atmospheric ideas to create a very diverse album that's a lot of fun to listen to. My favorite songs on the album are I Me, the first real song in this album after the intro Ye. This song features Mike Noyce, Camila Stavely Taylor, Velvet Negroni, and James Blake, adding some vocals to the song. What I really like about it is this song basically encapsulates what this album is. It does have some electronic tinge parts, especially on the vocals, making them a little bit more staccato in nature. They've also sped up some of the vocals as well. There are some other electronica parts on here. However, there also is a little bit more intricate and interesting percussion parts. There's some really nice soft guitar parts. There's even a flowing fingerpick guitar part halfway through the song, and there's also some horns and sax parts that ramp up the intensity of the song as it goes on. This song ebb and flows very well, making for a very standout song on the album. Holyfields, on the other hand, is a little bit on the more simple side. It's very understated. There are some string parts that flutter in and out of the song, but other than that, there really isn't anything else to the arrangement other than some like very staccato electronic parts. But what I really like is that the melody is solid. It builds in the way of getting to a little bit more of a darker tone in the middle, making for a very interesting and just very meditative song. You Man Like is another beautiful arrangement. This one is one of the shorter ones on the album. Bruce Hornsby gives some piano work on here, which is really, really beautiful. What I love about it is it's percussive in nature, but it also has some very open chords that ring out very well, feeling really full. The song also features a bunch of vocalists. Jen Wasner, Moses Sumney, Ella Jensen, Bryce Dessner from The National, and Brooklyn Youth Chorus, which was also used on the National album. It's really interesting, the parallel, because Justin Vernon was also on The National's newest album as well. It's a short song, but I love the piano work, I love the multiple voices on here, and the melodies are really solid. I wish there was a little bit more to it, but still a really solid and really memorable song. Salem also one with some great energy. It reminds me of a Coldplay song circa Milo Zaloto, where it just has a lot of really good energy, and the synth work is really strong there too, and pretty tense. The song builds well, eventually adding drums and horns, and honestly, it's just a really good build. Another beautiful song on here. Adding to other solid building songs, we got Faith, which has some really nice sparse piano at the beginning and then some rhythm guitar in the background. But what's cool is that as you get through the second half of the verse, the guitar comes out and more into the forefront. The melody is another really strong one. Once we get to the chorus, the song ramps up a lot on energy, and there is this bass boost idea, adding some more electronics. Sometimes it is a little bit grating, but the energy and melody makes up for that. And then the cool thing is that it eventually dies down again, making this again feel like a little bit of an ebb and flow. Honestly, a lot of this album is just really interesting with the arrangements. Most of the songs range around like 3.5 to 4 minutes, but you do get a bunch of songs that are smaller, like You Man Like, as well as some of my other favorite songs on here. Marion is a short and simple but really beautiful folk song. It has some great guitar work and the vocals are rich and intricate. Also really nice is that it's very rubato, kind of also foreshadowing another rubato song that we will talk about in a minute. All the rest of the other small songs, very nice as well. We has a solid beat, and I really like the subdued staccato guitar parts that hints the shape of the melody. They do add horn parts later, which is really solid. But what is really interesting about this is that when they add the horn parts in, it changes the beat of the song. It goes from a 4/4 to a 6/8 feel. And then the horns do drop out for the rest of the vocals that come in. And then Gelmore is also another one of the short songs, which has this very simplistic electronic arrangement. I really like the beeps and buzzes in here. It gives a lot of flavor to there without, overspelling everything. And the melody line is very interesting, especially when it gets to the chorus where it adds some minor parts that you probably weren't expecting. Now, one problem that I do have with some of these shorter songs and with some of the other songs on the album is that they do end a little bit too abruptly, sometimes wishing that I had a little bit more to hear, specifically on We, as well as You Man Like, and even I Me. I wish that it was a little bit longer because I feel like it would have fleshed out these ideas the best way possible. Also, in terms of my favorite songs, of course I have to talk about Shadia. This one is the second to last song on the album. It is hugely powerful. This one is the other really rubato song on this album. The song is very free-flowing and has some of Vernon's best vocals on here, even though they aren't there for that long. What I also love is how this song grows. Eventually, we get a saxophone solo for like the last minute or two. Also some very sparse yet very interesting drum work, making for it feel a little bit like a free flow jazz solo. It's beautiful, and it is one of the more standout songs I've heard from them. There's so much to feel there, it's so powerful, and honestly it would have been a perfect way of ending this album. But it doesn't, and that's where I have to get into some of my cons on this album. First off, going back to the songs that end abruptly, Hey Ma is one of these other understated arrangements. It builds well. Honestly, it's probably one of the more standard arrangements on here, something that is very easy to comprehend, follows more of the verse chorus structure, and it builds nicely. It starts with vocals and this percussive electric note and some held horn and sax parts. It makes for a pretty unique and interesting song, and to me, this is one of the better melodies on the album, especially when we get to the chorus. It is absolutely beautiful. However, the bridge is a little bit weird, and it does end really abruptly, making for one of the more questioning endings on this album. Another con on this album is Naeem. I think it's a decent enough arrangement. It starts with a 6/8 feel that is hinted by the piano hits and the chorus melody. But other than that, at the beginning, the arrangement is pretty sparse. The drums do enter the mix, changing the time at midway through, changing the timing to 4/4. This part is the best part on this song. It builds so well, and there's so much great energy there. But the problem is that I don't think neither the melody or the chorus are very strong on here. It makes it hard to enjoy the song when everything else there is kind of lackluster. And then honestly, it's not a bad song, but to me, Rabbi is not necessarily the best closer for this album. It's a very simplistic arrangement with some nice energy, and it is a nice way of cooling down after Shadiah, but it just doesn't really go anywhere. And it just leaves the album with a little bit wanting more after a song like that. However, none of these songs are truly terrible, and none of the arrangements are truly terrible. It's just sometimes there is a misstep, like a song ending too abruptly, or a song just that's not placed right on the album, or a melody here or two that's not necessarily the most interesting. Like Radiohead, to me, lyrically it's hard to always dissect a Bon Iver song, but there are a lot of songs on here that seems to be talking about the world at hand and trying to change it for the better. Songs like Holyfield, Hey Ma, You Man Like, Naeem, Gelmore, and Salem all are talking about dealing with climate change or dealing with poverty or dealing with homelessness and talking about big things that are happening in America. Shadiah, which is actually an acronym for Shittiest Day in America in History, is of course talking about the aftermath of the day that Trump got elected. We also have other songs dealing with Justin Vernon's questioning of faith and realizing that as he gets older, how his faith in religion, humanity, and relationships have dwindled over the years, but he still does have a shred of hope and faith through it all. To me, those are some of those more standout lyrics on the album. Gelmore is also pretty standout, talking about climate change and poverty and what could happen to the world if we let it to continue. But at the same time, it's also talking about making sure to make a change rather than standing aside from the issue, which I think is very interesting because there, of course, are people who talk about climate change and talk about changing the world, but just talk about it without ever doing anything. So that is a nice additive to this song. Hey Ma also stands out too because it is a little bit of two metaphors. One, of course, talking about your actual mother and talking about the nostalgia of life back then and how it's a little bit harder to have simplicity now, but also is talking about how we're treating Mother Earth with climate change and how it was so simple back then, but now it's not. And one other song that seems to be about the political climate is We, that talks about Trump supporters and hopefully realizing now that Trump will not actually fulfill the promises that he claims that he would. A lot of these songs do bring up the lights of these particular issues in a very nice way. Not necessarily spelling it out as much as Frank Turner did with Be More Kind, but the crypticness also adds a nice little layer to some of these songs. Overall, I have really grown to like this album. I think the diversity on here is really solid. I do like how everything culminates from 22 Million, from all their other albums, to make the complete package when it comes to their sound. There are a little bit of issues sometimes with the endings of songs. with some of the melodies, with some parts of arrangements. But overall, there isn't a song that I really hate on this album. And it's such a short and interesting ride that it makes me want to listen to it over and over again to try to pick out all those little pieces. So, of course, my verdict for this album is played on repeat. I don't know necessarily if it's in my top 10 for this year just yet, but it's getting pretty close. And I'm curious to see if this is the last album that they're going to be doing or if they have something else planned for the future, and I'm really curious to see what else they can do. But that is my time. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like or hate this album and your reasons why. Let me know other albums from 2019 you'd like me to review. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel so that way I know that you enjoy what I'm doing and want to see this channel become bigger and better for the future. So tomorrow I'm going to be back with probably my most anticipated album from 2019 and a lot of people's most anticipated album from 2019. So much so that I'm going to need a couple of people to help me out with this. But until then, this is Music Fan, and I'm signing off.